Okay guys, for this project we are going to have quite a bit of a challenge. All right, and it's going to be a 3-day project. I'll have it due Friday by the end of the day. So we're going to walk you through these directions fairly slowly and try to describe and show you best practices for completing this project. You're going to use some tools that you've already learned, some functions that you've already learned, and we're going to sort of put it together with something that maybe makes a little bit more sense on how and why to use these things. So the first thing we're going to do is to open the Beyonce template that I've given you. Okay, and I'm just going to double click in Google Drive. It seems like people have different ways of opening these files and getting them into Google Drive. Because I have Photopea linked up to my Google Drive, if I just double click on that file, Photopea will launch. Now you're going to see automatically in this file, if you check out the layers, which you should always be looking at your layers, I've got Nicole Kidman in the layer above Beyonce. So, but you don't need to worry about her right now. She'll come in later, and we're going to work on Beyonce. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is save this file out. Save as PSD. I'm going to save it in a folder. Hopefully do it real quickly. Research teaching, projects, Faceclean, and I'm going to call this correctly PER_08_Parley_J, all lowercase, Faceclean, and I'm going to put a 01 at the end. So now I already have this file saved, and when I want to save it out again, all I have to do is overwrite that file, and I'll show you that towards the end. The next thing you're going to do is create a Google Doc. This is sort of a standard operating procedure I have in my class. I like for my students to keep a Google Doc along with their work so that they write down, almost like a tutorial, what they do and how they do it. This will help you learn the tools. It'll help you have to think. If you've got to write things down, you've got to think about it. Okay, so create a blank Google Doc, and I'll show you a great example of a former student's Google Doc. Okay, so they started writing steps, took screenshots, wrote another step, took a screenshot, wrote another step, took a screenshot. These are not screenshots, however, and I'm going to show you how to get something like this into the Google Doc. All right, so if I go create a brand new Google Doc, I go to my apps, create a new Google Doc, and again, first thing I do, save it, PER_08 Parley_J Faceclean _doc. I can just name it that, and that'll be fine. All right, so I'm going to go step one. Okay, and then I'm going to follow the directions, and I'm going to pretty much write in here what the directions say, but maybe in my own words on how I do something. And the first thing we're going to do to Beyonce in our document in Photopea is create a guide. So you can see I have these rulers up here along the top and along the side. You can hide and show rulers by going to View, Rulers, or hitting Control-R as the hotkey on your keyboard, but by default, I believe they're up. So to get a guide, which is just a line that doesn't really exist, it's sort of something that allows you to follow what's going on. It gives you spacing. There's a lot of advantages to using guides when you're creating, especially when you're designing. But today we're going to use a guide just to split Beyonce's face in half, theoretically. So I'm going to left click and hold inside of my rulers and drag out until I get right in between her teeth there and let go. And now I have a guide. You can see it doesn't show up as a layer or anything. If I were to print this, this guide would not print, but the guide is there to help guide us a little bit. All right. Now, if I want to create a really good Google Doc, what I might do is just print screen here. You should all know how to print screen by now. And if you don't, you need to ask or Google it. Okay, Google's pretty powerful, pretty magical. So I just printed screen. If I go to my Google Doc that I'm keeping, I'm going to go created a guide in the middle of Beyonce's face. And then I'm going to hit return, and then I'm going to hit Control V to print. And so when I look at your Google Doc, I can see, yeah, there's a guide right there. Perfect. And then I'm going to hit return twice to give it some space. Then go step 02. And then I go back to my directions. And my directions say that on the left side of my image, which is the right side of Beyonce's face, I'm going to use the clone stamp, the spot healing brush tool. Again, this is clone stamp right here. As well as the patch tool, which we haven't talked about yet, to cover up the blemishes that I actually added to her face. This is not really, these aren't her blemishes, just so you know. So I'm going to get my zoom tool, I'm going to move way in. And the first thing I'm going to do is use the spot healing brush. You guys all learned to use this already. I always like to use a nice soft brush to allow it to blend. Maybe increase the size of the brush a little bit. And I'm just going to paint over one of her blemishes. And it should go away, hides it pretty nicely. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, because I just used a tool and I used it effectively, I'm going to go to my Google Doc and say, step 2, I used the spot healing brush to cover one of the blemishes on her face. Hit return, and now if I go back to Photopea, and I make sure I'm on the Beyonce layer, and I grab my marquee tool, my rectangular select tool, and I can select quite a large amount. I'm going to select that amount so we can really see where it is. I'm going to hit Control C to copy those pixels, go to my Google Doc, hit Control V to paste. There we go. Now there's proof that I used the spot healing brush to cover up one of the blemishes. So then we go to step 03, enter. And what are we going to do? Oh, I like to put colon there. Enter. What are we going to do now? Now, I actually forgot you guys have used the patch tool, so we're going to use the patch tool to cover up this blemish here in Photopea. So go back to Photopea, Control D to deselect. We don't want that selected. I'm going to get my patch tool, and I'm going to draw a broad stroke circle around this blemish. And then when I click inside and drag it into a similarly sort of a matching area and let go, and hit Control D to deselect, we'll see that that blemish is gone as well. So now what? Marquee tool, try to get about the same rectangle in there. Control C to copy. Step 3, I used the patch tool to cover up another blemish. Paste. And it's all the way down there, and that's totally fine. That's okay. Hit enter twice. Step 4. And you can see how this works. You should go on and on in your Google Docs. So I'm actually going to stop doing that and wasting that kind of time. You can see how easy it is to get images into a Google Doc and write about what you are doing. Okay, so let's go back to Photopea. Now I'm going to use the clone stamp tool to get rid of some more blemishes. So Control D to deselect. Control D to deselect. Space bar to move down to another blemish. And this one right here is going to be a little bit tricky, but let's try it anyway. So we're going to get the clone stamp tool. I want it to be nice and soft again. Might need to make it a little bit bigger. And all we're going to do is we're going to sample another part of her skin that's similar to the shading that we want right here. So I'm going to sample it about up here. And to do that, I hold down Alt, get my crosshairs. I left click once, and that just sampled that. And then when I come down here, you can actually see it covering it up. And I haven't painted yet. So I'm going to left click and paint, move it around a little bit till that thing's gone. So that blemish is gone as well. Now you can use this tool again if you want real quick and go Alt. Again, select a similar tone of her face, sample that, paint there. Okay, so any of those tools you can now use. I want this covered up and this covered up. And if you want to get tricky and get these little ones there and the little one above her eye, that'll work too. You might even think about getting this off of her neck, but that's up to you. So each time you do something, you should document it, copy and paste pixels into your Google Doc. Okay, so before we go any further, I just want to make sure you guys know how to move files and keep them organized. So I have my Google Doc. If I click on this little folder up here, it will say move, and now I'm going to move it where I need it. This is going to look a lot different than how you have your drives organized. 2021 projects, should be Faceclean in here, and I'm going to move it here. Okay, so make sure you move your files and stay organized. Keep them all together in a single folder. But that's pretty much all there is to steps 1 and 2 for today. I want you to get this far. Make sure you save your workout. So I'm going to save this out. Save as PSD. This is the one I want. I'm going to hit save. It's going to ask if I want to replace it. I say yes. And now I have it ready to go for tomorrow. And that's it for these steps. We'll get into the rest of this project tomorrow.